From the remote ages of antiquity, a remarkable teaching has existed that is universal in its application and ageless in its wisdom. Fragments of it are found in the Samaritan hieroglyphics and on tiles and stone dating back some 8,000–10,000 years. Some of the symbols, some as for the sun, moon, air, water, and other natural forces, are from an even earlier age preceding the cataclysm that ended the Pliocene period. Just how many thousands of years previous to that this teaching has existed is unknown. To study and practice this teaching is to reawaken within the heart of every man an intuitive knowledge that can solve his individual problems and the problems of the world. Traces of this teaching have appeared in almost every religion. Its fundamental principles were taught in ancient Persia and Egypt, India, Tibet and China, Palestine and Greece, and many other countries. But it has been transmitted in its most pure form by the Essenes, that mysterious brotherhood, which lived during the last 2 or 3 centuries BC and the 1st century of the Christian era in the Dead Sea in Palestine and Lake Marotus in Egypt. It's in Palestine and Syria the members of the brotherhood were known as the Essenes, and in Egypt, Therapeutai, or healers. The origin of the brotherhood is said to be unknown, and the derivation of its name is uncertain. Some believe it comes from Enoch, and claim him to be their founder, their communion with the angelic world having been first given to him. But whatever their origin, it is certain the Essenes existed for a very long time as a brotherhood, perhaps under other names in other lands. The teaching appears in the teachings of the Zoroaster, who translated it into a way of life that was followed for thousands of years. It contains the fundamental concepts of Brahmanism. The systems of India sprang from this same source. Buddha later gave forth essentially the same basic ideas, and his sacred Bodhi tree correlated with the Essene tree of life. Ancient Greece also followed these principles and a way of life. The same teaching was an element of the Adamic culture of the Phoenicians, the Alexandrian school of philosophy in Egypt, and contributed greatly to many branches of Western culture, Freemasonry, Gnosticism, the Kabbalah, and Christianity. Jesus interpreted them with the 7 Beatitudes of the Sermon on the Mount. The Essenes lived on the shores of the lakes and rivers away from cities and towns and practiced a communal way of life, sharing equally in everything. They were mainly agriculturists and arboriculturists, having a vast knowledge of crops, soil, and climate conditions, which enabled them to grow a great variety of fruits, vegetables, and in comparatively desert areas with a minimum amount of labor. They had no servants or slaves, and they were said to have been the first people to condemn slavery, both in theory and in practice. There were no rich, and there were no poor amongst them, both conditions being considered by them as deviations from the natural laws. They established their own economic system, based wholly on the natural laws, and showed all man's foods and material needs can be attained without struggle through knowledge of those laws, those that are written upon your heart. They spent much time and study both of ancient writings and their special branches of learning such as education, healing, and astronomy. They were said to be heirs of Chaldean and Persian astronomy and Egyptian arts of healing. They were adept in prophecy, for which they were prepared by long fasting, and in the use of plants and herbs for healing. Man and beast, they were likewise proficient. They lived a simple, regular life, rising each day before sunrise to study and commune with the forces of nature, bathing in cold water as a ritual, and donning white garments. After their daily labor in the fields and vineyards, they partook of their meals in silence, proceeding and ending it with prayer. They were entirely vegetarian, and in their eating never touched flesh foods or fermented liquids. Their evenings were devoted to study and communion with the heavenly forces. Evening was the beginning of their day. Their Sabbath or holy day began on Friday evening, the first day of their week. This day was given to study, discussion, and entertaining of visitors and playing certain musical instruments. Their way of life enabled them to live to advanced ages of 120 years or more, and they were said to have marvelous strength and endurance. In all their activities, they expressed creative love. They sent out healers and teachers from the brotherhoods, amongst whom were Elijah, John the Baptist, John the Beloved, and the great Essene Master, Jesus. Membership in the brotherhood was attainable only after a probationary period of a year and 3 years of initiational work, followed by 7 more years before being given the full inner teaching. The outer teachings are preserved in Aramaic text in the Vatican in Rome. Some of the Slavic text was found in the possession of the Habsburgs in Austria, and said to have been brought out of Asia in the 13th century by priests fleeing the hordes of Genghis Khan. Echoes of the teaching exist today in many forms, in rituals of the Masons, in the 7-branch candlestick, in the greetings, peace be with you, used time of Moses. From its antiquity, its persistence through the ages, is evident the teachings could not have been the concept of any individual or any people, but it is the interpretation by a succession of great teachers of the law of the universe, the basic law, eternal and unchanging as the stars are in their course, same now as 2 or 10,000 years ago, and as applicable today as then. Teaching explains the law and shows how man's deviations from it are the cause of all his troubles, and gives the method by which he can find his way out of his dilemma. The Essene teachings, Gospel of Peace.